intellectuals and delivers presentations across the world on various topics. He's also a regular speaker at university campuses and has also travelled the world extensively to deliver lectures as well. In addition to this, he's also led a major piece of research on non-Muslims' perceptions of Islam through IRA and is a senior researcher and lecturer for IRA. So inshallah I will put you on to our brother Hamza.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله أما بعد. Brothers and sisters in Islam, I greet you with the warmest Islamic greetings of peace. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Brothers and sisters, today I'm going to talk about a very important topic, which is the harmonious society, the harmonious self, the harmonious individual. And coming from a da'wah context, I want to have a unique perspective on this. So not only do we learn something, but also we want to get some concepts and ideas so we could deliver them to the wider society. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Qur'an, "Ud'u ila sabili rabbik," call to the way of Allah, to the way of your Lord. So we have an obligation, we have a requirement from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we all call to Allah. And this is something that is not only an obligation, but it's something that defines who we are as Muslims, who we are as human beings. Because every single one of you have come to today's winter conference for a certain purpose. It wasn't because you were bored, it wasn't because you were hungry, and it wasn't because you had nothing else to do. You came here because deep down within you, you want to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Deep down within you, you want to love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Deep down within you, you want to become not only a Muslim, but a mu'min. Someone who is closer to Allah. And that is very important. And this is why da'wah is not only an obligation, it is something that defines who you are. So since you came here to become a mu'min, someone who is closer to Allah, then you have to give the da'wah. Because the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, that can be found in the hadith in the Arba'in al-Nawawiyya, the 40 hadith of al-Nawawi. The Prophet said sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, لا يؤمن أحدكم حتى يحب لأخيه ما يحب لنفسه. You're not a true believer unless you love for your brother what you love for yourself. Think about this. You're not a true believer. You won't be the mu'min. لا يؤمن. You won't be a true believer unless you love for your brother what you love for yourself. And this brotherhood is not just Islam. It's not just Islamic brotherhood. And we have a lot of evidence for this. The first evidence is a scholarly evidence. And Nawawi himself, he explained this hadith, this akhi, to mean insaniya, humanity. Also we have other traditions in Musnad Ahmad that indicate it's people in general. And also, brothers and sisters, we have a whole discussion in the compendium of Imam Rajab al-Hanbali's text, and he discusses hadith at length, saying that this is about human beings in general. So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is telling us, if we do want to aspire to be the mu'min, the very reason why you came here today, then you have to call people to Allah. Because isn't that the thing that you love the most? Think about this. Isn't Islam the thing that you love the most? It's not your wife, brothers and sisters. I don't care if she's here. It's not your husband, sisters. I don't care if he's here. At the end of the day, the reason they married you is because they loved Allah. Because they chose the pious man, they chose the pious sister for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So ultimately, when we scratch the surface within our hearts, we see and we know that we do everything and we are driven by the love of Allah and by the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is the thing that we love the most. Because it's the thing that will take us to Jannah inshaAllah, and it's the thing that will protect us from where? From Jahannam, from that evil resting place, from eternal doom, from destruction. And this is why, brothers and sisters, I have decided to give this a different context, a different spin. So not only do we learn something, but we're able to give something to the wider society because it's an obligation and it's something that defines who we are as Muslims. So harmonious society. Before I get into the Islamic context of how to achieve a harmonious society, let's talk about our current society. And this is something that wallahi I feel so passionate about. Because our current society, and the reason I use the word our, is because we are part of this society, whether we like it or not. We work here, we live here, we got married here, we have children here, we have built communities here. We're not going away anytime soon. We're here to stay. So it's our community. And the reason it's our community because as a prophetic precedent, because the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ spoke about neighbors. And in a community you have neighbors. And those neighbors, they have rights. Whether it's 40 to your left or 40 to your right. And in these days, 40 downstairs and 40 upstairs. And this is part of the Islamic community. And we know many of the hadiths of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ indicating the importance of being a good neighbor. As he thought ﷺ that the angel Gabriel would say to the Prophet ﷺ that his neighbors will be part of his inheritance. So when I talk about our community, I'm not talking from the perspective that we adopt their values and we adopt their customs, no. What I'm saying is that it's our community to the point that we have a responsibility over them. أخرجت للناس. We're here for the people. للناس. Not من الناس. We're not from the people. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, li. We belong, we're for them. And this is very important to take into consideration, brothers and sisters. Because sometimes, every time we talk about this society, it's as if it's nothing to do with us. And this is a pugnacious attitude. This is not the attitude of a Muslim. Because every Muslim is a leader. Do we not know the hadiths of the Prophet ﷺ that talk about that we're like shepherds? Every Muslim has his own flock. And from the perspective of dawah, ulama have said that we are the shepherds of humanity. We have to take care of the affairs of human beings. We are ambassadors of Islam. So we really have to unravel this really silly mindset that really belongs to the ego, not to Islam, that it's basically, oh look at them, they're destroyed, and we're really happy, and we have Islam, ha ha ha, dirty kafir. But that's the reality of our attitude. Is this the attitude of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ? No one could say this. This is an obnoxious attitude. The Qur'an, Kitabullah, he speaks about Rasulullah ﷺ. It says, you're almost going to kill yourself from frustration and anxiety that they're not listening to this message. SubhanAllah. For 1 minute, let's just suspend what the fiqh is of this. What does it really mean here where it counts? Don't get me wrong, fiqh is important, we know that. But sometimes we lose the meaning sometimes. In the realm of ijtihad, in the realm of ikhtilaf. What does it really mean? It means that the emotional state of Rasulullah was one of worry. Think about that. The emotional state of Rasulullah was one of concern. And I ask myself the question, and you the question, are you concerned? Or are you the type, and we've all been through this, that we just point the finger and never realize that when we do that, 3 fingers are pointing back. This is very important, brothers and sisters, because we think once we have the amazing gift of Islam, the huge mountain of gold, we then hoard it, and we think we shouldn't give it to others, and we laugh at those who don't have it. This is a cult mentality. This is a gang-like mentality. Because it's very dangerous. Shaitan whispers to us. We're in the gangs when we're young. We're part of the Crips or the Bloods or whatever the case may be. And then we become Muslim and practicing, and then we carry that culture with us. We're in the new gang now. It's called the Muslims. And we have our dress code. It's called the fold and the beard. It's very subtle for Shaitan to make us not realize what our position is in this Western society. So when I talk about our society, I'm talking about in terms of a dawah context, and in terms of the context that we have a responsibility. TikTok? Good. So brothers and sisters, let's look at our current society. Wallahi, brothers and sisters, our current society needs the harmony of Islam. Our society needs the harmony of Islam. If you were to even realize the level of disgrace, the level of madness, the level of psychological torment, and the level of oppression that this society has given to its own people, and they don't even realize it, you would go crazy. If you were to understand, I always say to some of the brothers, wallahi, if the normal British man, even the EDL, they knew what was behind the banking crisis, there would be a civil war here today. This is something that we're going to discuss shortly. Our society, brothers and sisters, is suffering a lot with regards to social fragmentation. Society is fragmenting. With regards to parenting, the family structure, crime, rape, the honor of women, unjust economic policies internally and externally, at home and abroad, violence, alcohol abuse, suicide, drugs. There are huge problems, brothers and sisters. And a good quote that highlights all these problems is from the Children's Society report that was published in 2009, not that long ago. And they said the following. They said Britain and the US have more broken families than any other country. And our families are less cohesive in the way they eat and live together. British children are tougher with each other and live more riskily in terms of alcohol, drugs, and teenage pregnancy. And they are less inclined to stay in education. This comes against the backdrop of a much greater income equality, many more children live in relative poverty in Britain and the US. This is the reality, brothers and sisters, of our current society in Britain. And this doesn't stop there. Look at child abuse. According to NSPCC research, 7% of all children, think about this, 7%, you have 100 children, that means 7 children. 7% of all children are victims of child abuse. In the USA, an estimated 3.6 million children were accepted by local and state child protection agencies. We all heard the story about Baby P. When Baby P was almost tortured as a 2-year-old, his back was broken, he was burnt, his ears were cut off. A child, brothers and sisters, in our society. I used to work for the council, and you would hear so many disgusting stories in London, sometimes even by the Muslims, where many children were found, and I'm not ashamed to say this, many children were found, babies, toddlers, alone in rooms, with a mouth full of semen. This is the reality of our society, brothers and sisters. But we don't know this. And you think, oh, it's just an exception. No, this is common. We don't know this. Why? Because we're stuck with the iPhone, the iPad. We're stuck with the BBC, the Sky News, the movies. This is the reality of our society, brothers and sisters. Take women as well as an example. They always point the finger at the Muslims. You don't take care of your women. Women are oppressed and backward and mistreated. You dishonor your woman. But this is so not the case. Look what happens in Britain. And a mad mullah is not saying this. Amnesty International UK is saying this. In the UK, there are 167 rapes every day. That's 90,000 rapes a year, brothers and sisters. 90,000 rapes a year. There is one incident of domestic violence every minute. And that's the one recorded to the police. Imagine all the other incidences that are not reported. Interestingly, 74% of all men in this country will call the RSPCA if there was a sick dog on the road. A sick dog. But only 50% of men will call the police if there was a battered woman on the street. What is this showing to you? That a sick dog is more important than a battered woman? What about crime? Take America for an example. There are 16,000 murders a year. 16,000 murders a year. Current research now that's just been published. 25% of all women. Say there's 120 million women in America. 25% of that is say what, 30 million. 30 million women have been raped in America every year. 30 million. This was, type in BBC, rape statistics, USA. current research this year that 25% of American women have been raped. So there are problems, brothers and sisters. And not only are there problems within people's inner self. Because the reason all of these things happen, I believe, is because of the influence of society. And we know that the influence of society is so important because we have a hadith from the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he discussed the one who protects the rights of Allah. And he gave us the analogy of a boat, that there is an upper deck and a lower deck. And the upper deck are giving fresh water to the lower deck. But the lower deck, what do? They decide to make a hole at the bottom of the boat. What happens to the boat, brothers and sisters? It sinks. So from this hadith, there are so many lessons. This hadith gives us the basis for our social philosophy. Do you know this? This hadith gives us the basis for the way we view society as Muslims. Because in this society, in a Western society, it's what you call a liberal society. And a liberal society tends to be individualistic. It's a big word, but basically what it means is that the individual is sovereign. The individual has the importance with regards to his rights and with regards to who he is in terms of his freedoms. We don't deny this as Muslims. But what we say is this, that society is not just a summation, it's not just a combination of individuals. Rather, society is almost like a structure in itself. And it affects the individual, and the individual affects society. There is this balance. There's a balance between individual rights and social rights. Rather, in a liberal society, it's just purely individualistic. In crude terms, all about the nafs, all about what's in it for me. I'm alright, Jack. The Witham rule, as the Americans say. What's in it for me? And this sickness of individualism has permeated throughout the whole of Western society. This is why you had David Cameron, or for some of you, astaghfirullah, Dawood Kamran. Hopefully not. Yeah? Before he came into power, he used to be talking about broken Britain. But the family is gone. And this is all because of the values that they propagate themselves, which is individualism, that the individual is sovereign. He is king. His rights, his freedoms must be preserved and honoured. And a good example to show how the basis of this liberal society is false is by looking into pornography. Not literally looking into pornography, by the way. According to feminist philosophers, like Diana E. Russell in her book, rather in the collection of essays, Pornography and Feminism, in the Oxford University Press, she discusses that the legalization of pornography has facilitated rape. So all of these 90,000 rapes a year and 25% of all women in America being raped, this is facilitated by pornography. Now in liberal societies, they allow pornography and even some violence in pornography. Think about this. And this itself has facilitated men to go and rape. For example, Diana E. Russell, she discusses that when she went to the prisoners and they did research on rapists, 66% of them, they said that pornography was the thing that incited them. Why is that the case? Because pornography dishonors the woman, makes it into an object, makes it into something that you could take and throw away and do what you want with her. This is the reality of pornography. It desensitizes the mind and it socializes people to the effect that they see women as just a piece of meat. So Diana E. Russell discusses that 66% of all convicted rapists said that pornography was an inciting factor. In university in California they did a study, and it was anonymous, and 36% of all students, university students, said they would rape a woman if they could get away with it. So the point here is, under the false pretense of my individual freedom, because that's why it's legal in this country. It's legal in the United States, it's legal in Britain, because of what reason? Because it's my freedom. It's my freedom. My personal freedom to do what I want, whenever I want, how I want, as long as it doesn't harm anyone. A stupid philosophy, a baby's philosophy, someone who doesn't think. But the Qur'an tells us to reflect and think. يَتَفَكَّرُونَ for those who reflect. So when they say, well, as long as it doesn't harm anyone, but how do you know it doesn't harm anyone? How do you know it hasn't affected you in ways that you don't know? How do you know the psychological effects? How do you know the social effects of what you're doing? You have no idea. This is why you know not and Allah knows. This is why revelation is supreme. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He knows past, present and future. He knows the primary effect, the secondary effect and the tertiary effect of things. He knows and we know not. There is something that I think that's good for us, but really it's bad for us. And there's something that's really bad for us, but in reality is good for us. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about. And this especially in the context of jihad fi sabilillah. So we have to understand this. So based upon the childish philosophy of individual freedom, they say it's legal. But even feminist philosophers are saying that pornography facilitates rape, they don't do nothing about it. So this is an amazing example to show how this disharmonious society, under the basis of liberalism, under the basis of individual freedom and rights, has destroyed this society. And this is very important. Take economics for example. In America, how dare they? They come to our land and say that we need to fix our economic practices, and we need to have democracy, and we need to have a liberal economic system, when their own system is not working. 25% of America lives underneath the poverty ladder. They have to have food stamps, people. Food stamps. But yet still many Muslims are saying, come, hadayallah, we want you, we love you. It doesn't mean we hate the awam, we hate the people. This is politics. This is ideas. We hate the ideas. We hate the ideology. And we have to be clear about that. We have to be very clear about that. Because even Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes a differentiation between people in power, the awliya, not the friends, the awliya, which is a different context, and the people who are normal people. Because in Surah Mumtahana verse 8, what does Allah say? Allah doesn't forbid you to be kind and just. Allah doesn't forbid you to be kind and just with those who don't fight you and those who don't expel you from your homes. Do you see the difference here? The difference between people in power, reference points, awliya, and people who are just normal Joe Bloggs. But Muslims sometimes, because we don't really have a comprehensive understanding of the Qur'an, we think everyone is the same. So we think the taxi driver is Bush, and Bush is the taxi driver. And then we get confused whether we should pay him or not. How? So the point is, brothers and sisters, we have to have this context to be people of Qur'an, not people of emotion and people of political rhetoric. So, brothers and sisters, we have to understand that 25% of Americans are underneath the poverty ladder, and they're calling us to this. And individualism itself has created these problems. Western capitalism, Western liberalism in terms of economic theory is based on individualism. Let me tell you why. Adam Smith, the 18th century founder, he's behind your £20 note if you want to see what he looks like. The 20th century founder of liberal economics, he created this theory called trickle-down economics. Some theorists, they call it the horse and sparrow theory. What it basically means that somehow from the rich, the money is going to trickle down from the poor with no mechanism, with no value, just automatically. And that's why some people call it the horse and sparrow theory, because if you shove the hungry horse with so many oats, there may be one or two oats that drop on the floor for the sparrow to collect. But my argument is, what if the horse is hungry? There won't be no oats on the floor for the sparrow. And we see this today. And it's in line with the psychology of the Sunnah. Because the Prophet ﷺ said, what about the human being? If he has the value of gold, he would want another mountain of value of gold. That's the psychology of the human being. So this trickle-down economics is basically, definitely being promoted just by the rich. Now if you see current statistics, that even in the West, especially in England, the gap between the rich and poor has increased even much more since the 70s. Much more since the 70s. Because of this economic theory of individualism. Everyone's allowed to have as much wealth as they want, and they're not responsible for it. But in the Islamic tradition, we know we are accountable for our wealth. And we are forced to give sadaqah. with regards to iman, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that if you want to come closer to Him, it's an act of ibadah to give sadaqah and zakat. 2.5% of our wealth to give and distribute to the poor. But let me discuss how this policy itself, this liberal economic theory, has basically migrated itself to the rest of the world, because we live in globalization. They say the world is like a village now. It's the global village. There's no more real boundaries. This is why we have organizations like HSBC. What do they say? It's the world's local bank. I'm in Hong Kong. I'm in Greece. I'm in China. I'm in Pakistan. I'm in Dubai. I'm in London. I'm in Guatemala. I'm everywhere. This is globalization. Take huge companies like Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola goes into some African cultures before the TV is in African cultures, brothers and sisters. That's the reality of globalization. Honestly, some of children's first word is to say Coca-Cola. If you go to Iraq, who's Iraqi here? No one. Well, if you go to Iraq, ask them how you say chocolate in Iraq. Do you know how to say in colloquial Iraqi chocolate? Nestle. You know Nestle, the chocolate company? So basically the Arabic language has been diluted and changed because of globalization. Nestle. That's how they say chocolate in Iraqi. So the point I'm trying to say is, because we live in a globalized world, our society, which we're in the belly of the beast, the belly of the one that controls these global policies, is actually affected the whole world. And this is a disgrace, brothers and sisters. Because these same policies, this individualistic policy of the rich continue accumulating wealth and the poor, we don't care about them, and Europe as an organization, because Europe is not a set of countries anymore, it's just a big business. And we've seen this. You think Ireland is Ireland anymore? You think it has sovereignty? It's owned by the European banks. The Irish have no more sovereignty anymore. They've been owned and sold out. You think Greece is Greece? I'm from Greece. You think Greece is Greece? Greece is not Greece anymore. It's just a European bank. It's owned by a European bank. Every single policy they're going to make is going to have to be in line with the European economic policy. Because the European company, as we call it now, has to make its money now. Has to survive. There's no such thing as state boundaries anymore. It's a joke. So Europe, as a company, is giving unjust economic policies to Africa. They get all the goods cheap, and they don't allow those countries to sell their goods at home for the same price. It's a far more greater price. Just to balance the kind of inequality that they want to keep in order to have cheap goods. So this whole liberal, laissez-faire, I'm alright Jack economic policy has made our own brothers and sisters in Somalia die. Because 10 million people in Somalia died. Or were starving because of no food. Our brothers and sisters were starving of no food, where our sisters were carrying 6 children. She had to see which children she had to leave on the floor so they could die. Because she didn't have the strength to carry 6, she could only carry 4. Imagine the decision a mother has to make. Because of these policies, brothers and sisters, don't blame anything else. It's these policies. And don't blame Allah. Ar-Razzaq. He's the one who provides. He's the one who has provided. Don't think it's too little resources. Don't think it's too many needs, not enough resources. That's a capitalist myth. That's liberalism. But we know there's enough limited needs. The Prophet ﷺ said in the hadith in Tirmidhi that the Son of Man, all he needs is food, shelter and clothing, which gives us a philosophy of that we have limited needs and enough resources. So we have the philosophy of distribution, not one of excessive competition like liberal capitalism. And we know this to be true. According to the Food Agricultural Organization, it has estimated that there's enough resources on this planet to feed 3 planets people. This is why this gets me so angry. Because these deaths could be preventable. But they haven't been prevented because of greed. Because of liberal economics. Because of individualism. And this is something we need to wake up and smell the Play-Doh. Not the coffee, the Play-Doh, because we're still children. And we need to realize this disease ideology of liberalism has killed millions and millions. This whole terrorism game is a joke. You want a numbers game? Compare 3,000 to 20 million every year. 20 million children every year because of the weapon of mass destruction, which is debt. which is unjust economic policy. And don't think our government is so good. They gave £80,000, £80 million to the Somalis. This is rubbish. Via the IMF, what do? The aid they give is just a small slap, and what follows a small slap is a big punch. Take Vietnam as an example. They gave $244 million as aid to Vietnam. After a couple of months, they charged them $1,144 million in debt with regards to interest. So what they give with one hand, they take much more with the other. It's a joke. Debt is a disease. It's the weapon of mass destruction. According to UNDP report, 20 million children every 3 years dying because of starvation. And it's not because of resources enough. It's because of greed. As Professor Qur'an from the University of Maryland said, that greed has to be an intrinsic drive in the capitalist consumer. So it bails out the government. Because growth in Western societies is based on how much people buy, essentially. This is why they're so happy when you have things like royal weddings, because people are going to buy souvenirs. They're so happy when they have the World Cup, because people are going to buy. They're so happy when there's Christmas, Shirkmas, because they're going to buy more toys. Christmas has become, it's not even religious anymore. You can't even call it shirk anymore, really, because the religious aspect's gone. It's just consumerism. It's just money. The disease of consumerism, which is so funny, that consumerism is that it says to the human being, you have another need you didn't know about, and I'm going to basically provide a product to fulfill that need that you never knew about. It makes you think you have more needs than you don't. This is why marketing is a very, very specialized science in our society. To make you think you have other needs. Take the iPhone and the laptop. What's in the middle? The stupid product called the iPad. And they sold me, who needs an iPad? Don't get me wrong, if you have money as a Muslim, you could buy it. But think about the reality. Did you really need it? This is why Jobs, who passed away, he was the CEO of Apple, he basically said, I don't do no market research anymore, because I want to tell people what they need. And I'm going to give them a product that they think they need, but in reality they don't really need it. So the Prophet ﷺ said that we have limited resources, rather we have a lot of resources and limited essential needs. This is the geopolitics of Islam in contrast with capitalism. So Somalia, brothers and sisters, can be prevented. Somalia can be prevented. Why is there 10 million people dying of being too fat, of being obese in America? 10 million people are dying of obesity. The average American dies with 7 kilos of rotting meat in his stomach. Who's got Sky here? Go to Toba. And on Sky you have this stupid program called Man versus Food. They waste food. America has been designed just to eat, gobble up, and become a consumer. And they have these programs now, Man versus Food. There's enough food in this planet, brothers and sisters. Enough resources, as per the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, and as per current studies today. But yet, 10 million of our brothers and sisters are dying in Somalia because of no food. And we think it's charity. You need more charity. No. Although we do have to give and support. But ultimately, if we think that we need more charities to give money to Somalia, in a way we're going to be creating the same problem. Because it is the biggest problem when you think you have the solution and really it's facilitating the problem. By keeping your mouth shut and saying, here, have my sadaqah. Which is fine, but in reality they need the values of Islam. You want a harmonious system? You need the values of Islam, because Islamic economics is going to solve that problem. And what is that? What is it based on? It's based on the geopolitics of the Sunnah, which basically means there's enough limited needs and enough resources. So it creates a concept of distribution. We have sadaqah and zakah. We have the concept of no interest, because interest is an impediment to the distribution of wealth. If I'm buying a house, for example, and I have to have another third of that wealth, which is interest, it's excessive money. But if it's taken away from me, I have more money in my pocket. And you may think, well, he could keep in his pocket. No. Because what is he going to do at home? It's going to decrease 2.5% every year because of zakah. So that is an economic stimulus for the Muslim to inject the money back into society. sadaqah, entrepreneurship, businesses. And this is an amazing economic model of Islam. We need to learn our deen this way, brothers and sisters. So it becomes real and comprehensive for people. I'm telling you, if my Greek was good enough and I gave this talk in Greece, it would be revolution. I'm telling you, there will be a revolution. I spoke to my dad about this and he was shocked. He's now more interested in Islam. He's like, Islam has this economic model? From a 7th century Arab who was unlettered? It is shocking. And also, our money is contingent on wealth. It's not free floating like in Western society in liberal economics. You don't just print the money. Take your £20 note. It basically says, I promise to pay the bearer £20. Give it to the bank. What are they going to give you? Nothing. Zilch. Nothing, dude. They're going to give you absolute zero. Quantum vacuum. Yeah? Just some atoms from air. They're going to give you anything. Because they don't have anything. There's no wealth anymore. You just print, print, print. This is why you have a bubble, and then you burst the bubble. And then you have the bubble, and you burst the bubble. Boom and bust. Based upon this ridiculous, unstable currency. But in Islam, our printing of money is contingent on wealth, like the gold and silver standard. So what does that mean? It means when there's more money in society, it also means there's more wealth. So business is not undervalued by the printing of money. Do you know what the very crazy technical term for printing more money is? Do you know what it is? It begins with a Q.
Quantitative easing.
Quantitative easing. Quantitative easing basically is a very clever term for basically, we're going to print more money. That's what it is. And that money is not based on anything, no wealth. So it's fake, it's a joke, it's a lie. So Islamic economics is far more stable because it's based on something substantial like gold and silver currency. So brothers and sisters, we see how even the values of Islam from an economic perspective will solve the problems of Somalia. Because it's based fundamentally on distribution of wealth. So I want you guys to wake up, brothers and sisters. I want you to wake up and don't think, I'm not passing fatwa here, the only fatwa I could do is this. Wow. You get it? It's a fat wow. Yeah, kidding. I'm not skilled, I don't have Islamic knowledge in this area at all. But I'm going to give you some insights that I have. So I'm not saying it's halal or haram. But what I'm saying is, we have ulama debating and discussing, and we have the brothers going crazy on the ground saying, you must tick the box every 4 years. It's fard ayn, fard kifaya, it's fard this and fard that. And you have to get involved in civic society. If not, you're going to be not involved. They're going to take your niqabs off and your hijabs off. This is what they're saying to us, which is fine. It may be true, it may not be true. But I think the priorities have gone banana. It's gone crazy. Where are the videos? Where are people saying, call for Islam globally, call for the values of Islam? Forget hijab for 1 second. Just for 1 second, forget the niqab. About 10 million people dying because of no food. And we have the food in the world. And it's not being given to them because we don't have the values of Islam, which is a distribution of wealth based upon a very harmonious model. Why don't we wake up, people? What is the matter? Are we stupid? We're going to follow in the lizard hole. We're going to follow them continuously. Wallahi, we're going to do that. And we're going to get stuck and we're going to get suffocated by kufr. And that is the reality. And I'm passionate about this because the solution is so simple. It is so simple, you won't believe it. And these bankers have been getting away with it for 200 years. Brothers and sisters, wake up. We have the solution. It's from Allah. By definition, it's going to work. I don't even have to give you a technical talk about Islamic economics for it to work. By definition, it's going to work. And now I'm giving you a bit of the technicalities. Now you should be inspired to think, I'm going to call people to these values. That's the thing that we should be doing, brothers and sisters. Be proud of your deen. These solutions are amazing. It solved problems in history. For example, a Jew writing in 1453, which can be found in the book by Philip Mansur, Constantinople. He says to his other Jews, his brethren, come to the land of the Turks, the Uthmani Khilafah, the Ottoman period. We have food. Rich are the fruits of the earth. We're not oppressed with heavy taxes, and we live in peace and harmony. A Jew said this, based upon our economic values and models. Go to Turkey today, in the Ottoman mosques. You still find 2 huge marble domes within the mosque with a big hole. And they used to be full of gold. So when the rich man wants to give sadaqah, he'll put his hand in and he'll leave some gold there. When the poor guy needed some gold for the day, he'll put his hand in and take some gold. So you don't know who's rich or poor because the way it was designed, you can put your hand very deep. And they said, the historians say, it was always full of gold. Which means, under the Islamic model, brothers and sisters, no one needed food, shelter, clothing. There are 90,000 people homeless in this country under liberal capitalism, brothers. It's so simple. Call to these values. Call to the values of Islam. They're going to work. And if you really think about it, if we know this is the solution and we don't call for it, as Ibn Qayyim said, we are the silent shaitan. We are responsible for the deaths in Somalia. We are responsible for the deaths in the world of the poor people. Because we have the model and we haven't given it to people. How dare we now think that we expect anything from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when He has given us the system? Does this make sense to you? He has given us the solution. He gave us the gift. It's on the plate. It's easy. It's ready to eat. But we push it away out of our arrogance and out of our ignorance. And we're chasing other dreams and chasing other goals and chasing other solutions like, please brother, tick the box. I'm not trying to belittle it. I'm trying to make you realize the priorities here. 10 million people dying or being scared by the improbable reality of a niqab coming off. Especially in Britain. France is a different reality because of the institution and how it's deeply secular. France has always been stick. Britain has been stick with a carrot at the end. So they give us something to eat first, then they hit us with a stick. That's the reality of British politics. But brothers and sisters, I'm really passionate about this because if you were to understand that some of children would be almost eating, they'll be eating each other because they had no food. Do you understand what that means? Some children will be eaten by vultures because they're too weak to move. We're going to be accountable for this, brothers and sisters, because we have the mouth, we have the solution, and we have the opportunity. So if you want a harmonious society from an economic perspective, where do we go? To the Qur'an and Sunnah? Or do we go to something else? Even Muslims are telling us what to do. Non-Muslims rather. If you go to New York when they occupied the New York Exchange, basically there was a woman with a placard, a non-Muslim woman, and she said, we must do banking the Muslim way. Now, and when I talk about Islamic banking, I'm not talking about some of the Islamic banking that's been incorporated into the capitalist model. I'm talking about the Islamic banking that's based upon the fundamental values of Islam, not it by necessity having to fit into a capitalist model, because I don't really think that's going to work anyway, generally, yeah? That's just my humble opinion. I don't have much knowledge on it, so don't take it as gospel truth, as they say, or Quranic truth from an Islamic perspective, yeah? So brothers and sisters, you see the changes here? The changes we can do. Every single one of you has this ability. Who has studied economics at university? Politics. One of you. You have a responsibility, bro. That's it, you're empowered. You have the responsibility to articulate this to the wider society. I have a little theory. I think Islam is really going to come to the West, even from a political perspective, by economics. That's my view. I think that's the case. By destroying the values, how it's going to really feed them, protect their poor, and deal with homelessness, and deal with these issues. I'm telling you, I think that's going to be the case. Because we're on a verge of a meltdown. One Swiss economist, he said, get prepared people, get lots of tin can food, and buy guns. That's what he said. People in this country are going to be killing each other over food. Because it's going to be a huge meltdown. Because they've been pumping this society and this economic model with so much money that they can't deal with the debt. They can't chase the debt anymore. So from an economic perspective, brothers and sisters, wake up. The values are in Islam. What about society? They always talk about our social model is corrupt. It's a disgrace. For example, they have this really huge caricature and cartoon of Sharia law. And Sharia, we know, is not just about hudud. It's not just about punishment. Sharia is about how to treat your neighbor nice. How to treat your wife nice. It's a whole corpus of things to do, such as spirituality, economics, taking care of the poor, taking care of society. Hudud is a small part of it, but they caricature hudud in a Fox News type of way. Who's seen Fox News? Disgusting, disgraceful. Bill O'Reilly show. Oh, shaitan. May Allah guide him. They make this caricature of Sharia. Like you have this really big bearded guy with the beard up to his navel. MashaAllah. You have a niqabi sister. She's not even niqabi. She's just everything. Is almost to see one eye. And there's a small white boy in Bradford running to Sainsbury's. He steals a cookie. The bearded guy sees him. He gets his beard and trips him up with his beard. The sister with the niqab jumps up like a ninja and gets a sword from her cloak and cuts his hand and goes, Allahu Akbar. This is the caricature of Sharia law. They make it into a joke. But look at all the problems they have in society. They caricature the Sharia law. They don't see how Islam has an amazing social model, which first and foremost is based on amazing, unique values. Because in a liberal society, and you have to understand this, because of the concept of absolute freedom, excessive freedom, because of the concept of excessive individualism, they say, do what you want. There's no such thing as morals from a political perspective. This is why you will never see a government politically talking about morals. What do you hear from Cameron and even Blair and Bush? What do you hear from these guys? Freedom, human rights. You hear these abstract notions, things that are just the framework to allow you to do what you want. And the philosophers of politics, they call it, in liberalism, in Western philosophy, you don't have the conception of the good life. Which means the society, Western society, cannot tell you what is good. And that's the problem. But in Islam, it takes the brave stance to say, no, we know what is khair, we know what is pure, we know what is good, and we believe it's the Qur'an and Sunnah. And that is propagated via our own media, from the khatib, from the ulama, from the du'at, from the Islamic radio, TV, media, newspapers. You have halaqat, you have the education system that would permeate with these values. And what are these values? Rahmah. Rahmah. It's a lack of rahmah, brothers. Do you know what rahmah means in reality? It means unconditional compassion. Because what does Allah say about Himself? Ar-Rahman Rahim. He's Rahman to even the atheist. If He wasn't Rahman, then the atheist wouldn't even have a glass of water. So that's unconditional compassion. And Rahim is specific for the Akhirah, isn't it? For the Muslims. So what we have to understand is that Ibn Qayyim said, when you see Rahmah, you should see Islam. As Allah says in the Qur'an, what is the steep path? And what should tell you what the steep path is? It's to free a slave, to feed a poor relative, and to be one of those who enjoy to compassion and patience. Allah says this in the Qur'an. So these values include rahmah, include justice. Inna Allah yuhibbul muqsiteen. Allah loves the just. He mentions this 3 times. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu kunu qawwamina lillahi shuhada'a bil qisti wa la yarjimannakum shana'anu qawmin la'alla ta'dilu. Oh, you who believe, be witnesses, steadfast witnesses for Allah in justice. Don't let the hatred of others make you swerve from justice. Be just, for that's closer to your duty. In the Sunnah, the Prophet ﷺ said, اتقوا الظلم فإن الظلم ظلمات يوم القيامة. Be conscious of injustice and dhulm and oppression, for it's going to be darkness on the day of judgment. So values such as justice, compassion, mercy, tolerance, these are the values that we propagate in society. So it's not like a Western narrative where they say, no, you just have to have the framework for freedom. And what like for example, Professor Will Kimlicka, who's a professor of liberalism and politics, he says what Western societies do is that they say the government doesn't have a say, but they allow a marketplace of conflicting values. So people will conflict with the values, and the strongest values will come first. But the problem with that is the people who are the richest and the strongest will always win, like the capitalists, like the ones with money, and the ones who own the media. So the point is, brothers and sisters, we have a conception of the good life. And on top of these values, we propagate them. As we said, by the media, via the Friday prayers, etc., etc. And on top of this, we have mechanisms in society to prevent issues and crime and problems. We have mechanisms in society to prevent issues, crimes and problems, brothers and sisters. sisters. In this society, they don't have those mechanisms. What does Allah say in the Qur'an? Do not approach adultery. Do not approach adultery. So that Allah is saying in the Qur'an, has given us, and a lot of the ulama did qiyas from this, they did an inference from this, and said, therefore the Sharia prevents the path to kufr, the path to haram. So we have mechanisms in our own society to prevent crime in the first place. In this society, it's free for all. You have an absolute sense of freedom, so you could do what you want. But in the Sharia, it's different. It puts obstacles to the facilitation of haram and the facilitation of crime. This is why Professor Clive Holland, he's a criminologist, he basically said that we always talk about the new laws we should have in place for the thief, for example. But we never talk about the underlying reason why people are stealing in the first place. Only until recently they banned subliminal advertising for credit card marketing campaigns. Subliminal advertising is almost a manipulation of the soul to make you want to have credit cards just for the sake of credit cards and being an internal debt. They just recently banned these kind of manipulative ways of grabbing your attention. But Western society in general doesn't stop the path to haram. For example, we have segregation. We segregate unnecessary social interaction between the sexes. So we have mechanisms in our society to prevent crime in the first place. So these are the first three layers. We propagate cohesive values like rahmah, justice, tolerance. Then we propagate them by all our means like khalaqat, in our education system, the khatib, our ulama, our media. That's the second. And the third is that we have mechanisms to prevent crime in the first place, which is in contrast to liberal society, because they say everything goes. And then the last one is suitably harsh punishments. Not barbaric punishments, but suitably harsh, because they sit on an amazing cohesive model. So when someone jumps from the amazing values, then they escape the way we propagate those values. Then they escape all the mechanisms we put in place to prevent crime in the first place. And then they escape the very comprehensive justice system, which we know is very comprehensive, as the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said in the hadith, that it's better to allow people to go free, guilty people to go free, than inflict a punishment on an innocent person. I believe this hadith is in Tirmidhi, but I could be corrected, yeah? And there's many other hadith, and if you go to the books of fiqh, we see who is the judge, what the judge should act upon. He should never judge when he's angry. So we have a comprehensive view on how to apply justice. Even I was speaking to Shaykh Haytham al-Haddad, may Allah preserve him, and when he was studying in Saudi and he was looking at the courts, there was this couple who weren't married and they slept together. And basically, they were saying to them, "You're married, aren't you?" They're like, "No, we're not." They know the ruling, right? "You're married, aren't you?" They're almost giving them an excuse, yeah? It's so like, find an excuse for them as much as you can. And people think it's like jungle justice. You find a monkey in a tree, then you cut his head off, yeah? It doesn't work like that in the Sharia. It's very comprehensive, yeah? And after escaping all of these conditions, for example, some ulama say there's about 19 conditions for theft. Some of it includes, you have to be in a public place, it has to be over a certain amount, you have to basically be over the age of puberty, you shouldn't steal just for hunger, etc., etc. And then after bypassing all those conditions, and in a court of law, with all the conditions, then you have the suitably harsh punishment. And the reason it's suitably harsh is why, what did we discuss in the beginning? What was the hadith on our view on society? Who remembers? No, that was economics. The ship. You have the upper deck and a lower deck. The hole in the bottom, exactly. So we believe there's a relationship between individuals and society and individuals. So this is why the punishment itself is an act of rahmah for the wider society. And this is how we should view things. It's not like, "Oh look, it's that guy, his hands off, oh my God." But we have to see this as true compassion. Because true compassion is sometimes, when your son pokes the eye out of your daughter, you're not going to say to your son, "Jazakallah khair," are you? You know, you're going to go, "Bata!" Give him a good backhand Pakistani style, yeah? Or whatever the case may be. But the point is, you're going to deal with the situation because she's crying. And then her mother's upset as well. So, they may have rahmah to the individual, but we have rahmah to everybody. To to the whole society. So these two to be harsh punishments are as a result of Allah's love and rahmah. Because they're good for us. Because they have a preventative philosophy. We don't want everyone's hands cut off. No, we don't. Ibn Taymiyyah, he said, if you did a deed that deserves the hudud and you're not caught, then you just repent and live your life. Because, it's the public manifestation of the sin. Don't we know the story of Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu? He went into a man's house, he was drinking, there was girls around. He couldn't apply no punishment or say anything. One, there's no witnesses. Two, he did something wrong as well, he went into the house. You can't spy, can you? And you can't go into someone's house. And then when they met in the marketplace, what was the result? They both repented. They both changed their ways. So Islam is not... Do you see the point here? So when we see the social model in its harmony, in a harmonious sense, we see how it's very needed for this society. This is why I mentioned all of the problems that we have with regards to rape, injustice, crime, and all these problems. So when we look at economy, when we look at society, we see, brothers and sisters, how Islam is the solution. And there's so much more to explore. This is like a 2-hour lecture, yeah? But there's so much more to explore. But I want to give you a taste, so you know when you walk out of here, you know what to call to people to. You know what to say. You don't have these abstract notions of maqasid sharia, like, oh, we want preservation of life, preservation of religion, which is true, but that's all. Islam is not just based on maqasid, the objectives of sharia, everyone to be happy, everyone to be nice, everyone to live nice, and we forget how to get there. Because this is the problem from a modernist perspective. They call people to the maqasid of the sharia, the objectives of the sharia, which really is the hikmah from the ahkam, but they ignore the ahkam and they just stick to the objectives. But in doing so, you will never get the objectives in the first place, because Allah has given us the particulars, the ahkam, to reach the objectives in the first place. So this is the big discussion in our communities, brothers and sisters. How do we articulate a case for Islam in a positive way? Do we say, yeah, we have the maqasid, the preservation of life, preservation of religion, which is true, but then we do any means necessary to achieve those? No. Islam has a method and a way. We have our hudud, we have our social model, we have our economics. For example, if we were just to stick to the maqasid of Islam and say, yes, we want money for everybody, we want everyone to have a good life, and then we jumped into the liberal bandwagon and said we need capitalism, then you would be responsible for the deaths of millions of people. Do you see the point? You may get the Islamic objective, you don't have the method, you don't have the particulars in place, you don't stick to ahkam, you don't stick to the sirat al-mustaqim, what happens? Destruction. Because in reality, the method, the principles, the ahkam is there to reach the objective. You don't take the objective and you throw away the ladders, you go to the second floor and then you throw the ladder down. And then when you realize you have to go to the third floor, you're stuck. Do you see the point? And that's the reality of today's notion of maqasid sharia. Like Shaykh Haytham, when he was teaching us in the dars, that essentially what you have the divine reasoning. Then you have the text, which is the Qur'an and Sunnah. You have the divine reasoning, known as the illah. And from this you have the ahkam. And from the ahkam, you have the wisdom. And from the rationalizations of the wisdom, so you see a pattern from the wisdoms based upon the ahkam of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you form them into categories which the ulama have called the maqasid of the sharia, okay? The objectives of the sharia. So they're all linked. But what's happening now, people are taking the maqasid and they throw everything away, or they turn it upside down. Like the first thing is the maqasid, so you don't need the text anymore. But the question is, where did you get the maqasid in the first place? It's from the text. So to ignore the text, you've thrown away the maqasid. The maqsad, the objective. So brothers and sisters, be very clear, be very careful that we have the solutions for harmonious society, especially from economic and social perspective. And now is the time that we rise up as Muslims and we articulate this to everybody. This is the reality, this is the time, this is the moment, this is the window of opportunity. Look at Europe. How long do I have left? 2 minutes. Look at Europe. Look at America. Economic meltdown. Look at Africa, Somalia. Poverty. Look at social fragmentation and decay. Now, the 21st century is the century for Muslims to rise up and stand up and articulate the values of Islam. Not to call to other things, to say this is the harmonious society. In a positive way, in a loving way. But to show to them, you want to solve the problem of 10 million deaths in Somalia? Islamic economics. You want to solve the problem of 160 rapes a day in Britain? Islamic social model. You want to prevent 25% of American women being raped and beaten? Every 6 seconds the women being battered in America? Social model of Islam. You want to deal with poverty even in your own countries? Social model of Islam. Because if we don't do this, brothers and sisters, then it's as if we are silent. We're the silent shayateen. We're the silent devils. Because we have the solution. We should be calling for it now. And we all have the capability, mashallah, tabarakallah. You're young, even if you look old, you're still young. You're here in the cold, so that means you must be fit enough to do something. You can talk, you're articulate, your English is good. You're at university. I know some brothers here from Bradford, Huddersfield, Leeds, Timbuktu. Yeah? All these brothers, they've studied, they can articulate themselves, mashallah. So be wary, brothers and sisters. It's a responsibility on our neck now. It's a responsibility. Now is the window of opportunity to show to people you want a harmonious economic reality, you want a harmonious society, then call to Islam. Because if we don't call people to these things, we're going to be held accountable. Because we are ukhrijat lin-nas. We're here for the people, brothers, not for the people. And don't forget, it's the thing that's going to make you wake up in the morning. To give you the added drive, the added purpose. What drives you as a Muslim? Obviously because we want to live and do ibadah and do good deeds. What's the added thing, the added purpose? It's like a secondary purpose. It's responding to the call of Allah. That gives us true life. As Allah says, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا اسْتَجِيبُوا لِلَّهِ وَلِرُسُولِهِ إِذَا دَعَاكُمْ لِمَا يُحْيِيكُمْ. All you who believe, respond to the call of Allah and His Messenger to that which gives you life. The ulama said, the mufassirun said, you don't respond to this, you have dead hearts. Do you have dead hearts, brothers? No, of course you don't. Say no. Of course not. So brothers and sisters, I hope this has motivated you to even inspire you to research further in the economy of Islam, while obviously maintaining your ibadah with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because sometimes we could get all like intellectual gymnastics and think, I should be like this and I should be like that, and you forget your night prayers when you were doing your night prayers. I'm saying, what you're doing now, do it, continue it, like be inspired now to research on how does Islam solve social problems, how does Islam solve economic problems. This should have inspired you to do that, and if it does, continue and articulate to the wider society, because this is the harmony of Islam. Because if you really, really care for other people, like the Prophet ﷺ did, I'm going to finish now, sorry Sheikh, as the Qur'an, when we mentioned the first ayah, when Allah says that the Prophet ﷺ is almost going to kill himself from anxiety and frustration that people are not listening to his message. Why was he anxious? Why was he frustrated? Because he knew the reality of hell. And any human being who knows the reality of Jahannam wouldn't want anyone there, even Hitler. I'm telling you, you wouldn't want no one there, no one. And articulating a good case for Islam via social and economics will help bring people to Islam as well. Because the majority of Muslims that came to Islam was via what? What was it via, brothers? Yeah, it's an interesting way of saying jihad. That's what jihad is, it's not just fighting. Jihad is da'wah. The objective of jihad is what? Da'wah. That's the objective. Jihad is a comprehensive term, which means removing the obstacle that prevents the da'wah in the first place. So da'wah, via the governance mechanism, via the power that we had when we had Medina. So brothers and sisters, when we show people the justice of Islam within ourselves, within our societies, we could bring people to that. And also, it would solve the problems in society, have a more harmonious society. We could have spoke more about spirituality and dhikr and all this stuff, which gives a harmonious self as a human being, and going to the works of Imam Rajab and Hanbali on humility and khushu and stuff like this, but we don't have enough time. So hopefully, inshallah, brothers and sisters, find this opportunity to articulate a good case for Islam and show that Islam can have a harmonious social model and harmonious economic model. And if you don't know, what does Allah say? Ask those who know. And there's many scholars, ulama here, who know about these things. Just extract it from them, okay? Inshallah. So you could be walking du'at and say, this is how I'm going to be active. Come to these values, because this is the true solution to prevent 10 million deaths, prevent all these rapes and crime. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta wa astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Jazakallahu for listening, brothers and sisters. Assalamu alaikum.
Jazakallah khair, Sheikh Hamza. Our next speaker is Sheikh Al-Rashid. We'd like him to come up, inshallah ta'ala, but before he begins, we'd like to do a small appeal, inshallah ta'ala. We're going to ask Sheikh Rashid to say a few words, inshallah, to encourage towards something which is beneficial for each and every one of us.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين